we can expect this year? 1. Bamboo. Bamboo. Telugulo veduru. Bamboo is important because in non-forest areas it was considered as grass. Forest Act will be amended. In non-forest areas it will be considered as grass, so that the farmers can benefit out of it, all those things. So you may get a question related to bamboo. Bamboo is an important area. In the same way, CAMPA, Compensatory Afforestation Fund. Compensatory Afforestation Fund. As you all know, when forest lands are being cut and used for developmental purposes, you should deposit some money. Earlier the money is with Supreme Court. Now after Compensatory Afforestation Fund Management Authority was formed, it was in the Public Accounts Fund. So you have to read in detail about CAMPA, which is very important. Next is coral reef. Coral reef. Australia's Great Barrier Reef is under threat. Australia's Great Barrier Reef is under threat. So there are 2-3 ways of asking this question. First is types of coral reefs. That is fringe reefs, atolls and barrier reef. Fringe reef, atoll and barrier reef. This is the first thing. Second thing, they may ask you, what do you mean by zooxanthellae? Third thing, they may ask you, what is coral bleaching? Fourth thing, they may ask you, what is phytoplankton? Or they may ask you to locate the weathers. Generally coral reefs will be in the 25 degrees, minimum 25 degrees Celsius. They need some heat, sunlight. So coral reefs generally will not occur in the polar regions. Coral reef generally will not occur in the polar regions. So you may get a question, means the area which is very important is coral reef. C-O-R-A-L, coral reefs. You have to prepare at length about coral reef. And endangered species. Endangered species, critically endangered species. As you all know, IUCN will give you a red data list every year, means regularly if not every year. Endangered species, critically endangered species are very important for exam. Olive ridley turtles time and again appearing in the newspaper. They are not in endangered, they are in vulnerable list. And Rushikulya, Gahirmata, Devi beaches are very important in Orissa. There is a chance of getting, means similar questions like olive ridley turtles, snow leopard, red panda, all these questions. So 40 to 50 IUCN endangered species recently are very important for exam. Endangered species, critical endangered species, all those things are very important. Next thing, bankruptcy insolvency code. Last year, to minimize the problem of non-performing assets, Parliament have passed a code called bankruptcy insolvency code. That code might be a topic, or Surface Act might be a topic, or debt recovery tribunals might be a topic. On bad bank, PARA, Public Sector Asset Rehabilitation Agency might be a topic. Some question might be relating to non-performing assets, particularly with bankruptcy insolvency code, insolvency professionals, insolvency management agencies, bankruptcy insolvency board, bankruptcy insolvency fund, bankruptcy insolvency board of India, bankruptcy insolvency fund, and individual cases go to DRTs, companies cases go to National Company Law Tribunal. So these are the factual things which you have to equip with. So bankruptcy insolvency code is also important for the exam, and recapitalization of banks. Some question relating to the banks and even banking terminology. Banking terminology is very important. Like marginal standing facility, liquid adjustment facility, ways and means advances, repo rate, reverse repo rate. One question relating to banking terminology. Banking terminology you have to prepare well. In the same way, in the share market, there is an area which is very, very important. Bond price and bond value, the difference. You have to read this concept very well. Last year, 3 times it appeared in the newspaper. Even Hindu paper wrote it in the editorial page. Bond price and bond value. If bond price increases, bond value decreases. That difference, an entire concept you have to learn. In economy, bond price and bond value. Next, Government of India again reconstituted Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. Government of India reconstituted Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. This is also an important topic. Even Serious Fraud Investigation Office, SFIO, it is also in news. Serious Fraud Investigation Office for white collar crimes. Big crimes, corporate crimes. There is an office called Serious Fraud Investigation Office. It belongs to Government of India, where most of the senior most banking officers, police officers who are expertise in white collar crimes, who can detect them, they work in the SFIO, Serious Fraud Investigation Office. Next, Article 262 of the Indian Constitution, interstate river water disputes. It's very important because of Kaveri issue, because of Mahanadi issue, because of various river water disputes. You have interstate river water disputes, Article 262. And UPSC's all-time favorite is rivers and its tributaries. For geography, in geographical perspective, for example, Bhima is a tributary of river Krishna. Okay, like that, you have to know the tributaries of all the important rivers in India from Ganga to Godavari. Narmada, Prachi river, you should know Prachi river, you should know tributaries of Narmada river. So most of the rivers you should know. Rivers and its tributaries, that is one of the questions which we come across. Next, Article 263 of the Indian Constitution. Interstate Council, star mark question. Article 263 Interstate Council is a star mark question. You know why? After 10 years, after 2006, it again appeared in news in 2016. The President have constituted Interstate Council. The Chairman of Interstate Council is Prime Minister. The Chairman of Interstate Council is Prime Minister. Prime Minister will nominate 6 cabinet ministers. Prime Minister will nominate 6 cabinet ministers in the Interstate Council. And all the state GMs are the members. And they will discuss the policies, coordination and resolve the disputes in the Interstate Council. So Modi have reconstituted. President ordered, Modi have acted as a chairman in 2016. Interstate Council Article 263. And then you might get a question on zonal councils also. Zonal councils are statutory bodies. Yes or no? Yes. Because zonal councils are created by States Reorganization Act 1956. Zonal councils are statutory bodies because they were created under State Reorganization Act 1956. Does the Northeast Zonal Council also belong to State Reorganization Act? No. Northeast Zonal Councils are created by separate Northeast Zonal Councils Act. Northeast Zonal Council is created by separate Northeast Zonal Councils Act. Okay. So Article 263 Interstate Council and Zonal Councils and Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. These areas which we have to emphasize in polity again. Coming back, in science and technology, NISR, you know, NASA ISRO synthetic aperture radar. NISR, it have 2 frequencies, L band, S band. NASA ISRO synthetic aperture radar. Next, NAVIC, IRNSS, you know that. You have to go in detail about that. Next, you should also focus on, we always focus on Olympics, but this time we should focus on Paralympics. For disabled people, for differently abled people, Paralympics. Mariyappan Thangavelu won the gold 2 years back, along with PV Sindhu. PV Sindhu went to Olympics and Mariyappan Thangavelu went to Paralympics. But how many of us know Mariyappan Thangavelu? You should follow Paralympics also, not just Olympics for UPSC. Next comes definition of a national park, sanctuary and eco-sensitive zone. These three definitions are very important. For example, between a sanctuary and a national park, limited human activity and limited grazing is allowed in a sanctuary but not in a national park. Limited human activity and limited grazing is allowed in a sanctuary but not in a national park. So eco-sensitive zone, sanctuary and national park. These three definitions are very important, and you should also know which sanctuary is in which national park. Sometimes some national parks and sanctuaries intersect. Sometimes some rivers flow. Sometimes some type of tribes exist. For example, in Agastyamalai Biosphere Reserve, the oldest tribe in India lives, Kanikaran tribe. In Agastyamalai Biosphere Reserve, Kanikaran tribe will live. So these type of questions can also be expected. And one of the favorite areas for examiner generally will be tribes in India. Tribes, tribal culture, tribal festivals and tribal locations. There will be hardly 50-60 most important areas, particularly vulnerable tribes. So you have to remember the tribes and the locations and their culture. You have to remember. This is very important. Particularly vulnerable tribes. You have to remember their names and their locations. Next, logistics got infrastructure status. Apart from logistics, anything got infrastructure status? Housing. Apart from logistics, housing is already infrastructure, rural housing. Apart from logistics, anything got infrastructure status? Anyone in the class? Just think it over. I read somewhere recently, logistics got infrastructure status 6 months back. Recently, one more thing joined in the infrastructure status. What is that? Next thing, South China Sea Islands, disputed islands. You have to locate all the disputed islands in South China Sea. Spratly Islands, Parcel Islands, their names, Chinese names, Philippines names, Japanese names, South China Sea, the islands. Next, North Korea, ICBMs. Okay, Sasang 12, Sasang 14, there are 2 ICBMs. You have to read that. Next, there was one act. See, in Delhi, during Diwali, they have banned crackers. Under this, there was one regulation called PESO. PESO. You have to read about PESO. Explosives, relating to the explosives. You have to read PESO, PESO. Next, GST. In GST, there are 4 areas which you have to focus. E-way bill, GST network, GST council, E-way bill, GST network, GST council, and what are the taxes that were subsumed under GST? What are the taxes that were subsumed under GST?